Hey, we were talking about the final voyage south for the Aurora Australis before she retires after a whopping 31 years at sea. And she's done some pretty good things in her time. The Orange Roughy has carried more than 14,000 expeditioners across the Southern Ocean, which has also included around 150 research and resupply voyages. But what happens to the Aurora Australis now? So once she comes back in a few weeks after her trip south, where does she go? IanBray is the Assistant National Secretary of the Maritime Union of Australia, and he has some pretty grand plans for the icebreaker if the government comes to the table.
Well, coming to its end of its Antarctic life, we think that there's further use for it. And there wouldn't be a more fit-for-purpose vessel on the Australian coast at the moment to provide an emergency response vessel in times of crisis on the eastern seaboard.
So what types of emergencies are we talking about here?
Oh, well, with a ship, you know, you've got a clean sweep of options, whether it be cyclone, flood, bushfire, any kind of emergency where access to road and air is limited. The first port of call would be a ship. And the Aurora Australis, given its fuel capacity and cargo carrying capacity, could provide, those emergency responses as a first aid unit.
Specifically, can you talk me through how you think it would be perfect to be a specialist emergency response vessel?
Yeah, sure. Like, for instance, if you take the bushfires that we just recently encountered across numerous communities, one of the things that they found challenging would have been fueling up the emergency service equipment on the ground. The Aurora Australis would have the ability and capacity on the Australian coast to carry 1.8 million litres of diesel, which would be, ideal to go into port, pump that ashore for the emergency services to use. Likewise, it has the capacity to carry 109 passengers above the marine crew capability. So you could have first response units on there. It has a fully functional hospital, so where there's a real emergency and you needed to tend to emergencies in that capacity, it has the capability to do that. It could establish communications if communications go down because it has a fully functional radio room. So it could re-establish temporary communications in the event that communications go down. So it is a very, very vast suite of capability that it could provide.
So do we not have anything like this out there already?
No. And the recent bushfires seen how much of a gap there was, where we required the maritime response that was provided outside of the Navy was by private industry. So whether it was the Kangaroo Island ferries or the tugs in Eden, the offshore oil and gas provided the Far Saracen and Far Senator. If those vessels weren't there, there wouldn't have been no maritime capacity to perform, the duties and tasks that they did.
We're seeing the effects of climate change. Do you think that there will only be more and more disasters and a need for something like this?
I think it's common sense. How we didn't see it before, I won't go into, but given the vastness of the bushfires, or it doesn't even have to be the bushfires. Take Cyclone Yassi in Queensland when it flattened towns up in North Queensland, and the roads were inaccessible and air. The first thing that would have suited down to the ground would be the ship. So I think, given what we've experienced, and given that a gap in maritime capability and response had been identified, I think this is just a grand opportunity to, close that gap and make sure that any national response, emergency response, is has a maritime capability built into it.
This would, of course, come with a price tag. How much are we talking?
Oh, well, I'm glad you asked. For as little as $10 million, I think the government could purchase the vessel and dry dock it and make sure it's performing all of its functions.
Why would it cost so much?
Well, $10 million is not a lot. If you were to build a purpose-built vessel from scratch, you would be in the vicinity of $350 million to $500 million.
Okay, so it sounds like a bargain. How long would it take to turn around and get it back on the water?
You could have it by the time it completes its final voyage down to Macquarie Island, and by the time you demobbed all of the Antarctic equipment for the Antarctic division, and then took it to dry dock, I'd say you could have it ready to go within 2 months to 3 months.
Essentially, it's pretty much ready to go.
Yeah.
What was due to happen, or what is due to happen to the Aurora Australis once it comes back from Macquarie Island on its final voyage?
Well, given now that it's known that it hasn't got the extension with the Australian Antarctic Division and its contract isn't being renewed there, it will likely, if nothing is found for it in Australia, it's likely to disappear overseas and perform a variety of functions over there. So we'll lose it off. This opportunity will close in the next, month to 6 weeks, and if we don't take the initiative here, we'll probably lose it forever.
Lucy Braden here with you on Drive, and IanBray is my guest. He's the Assistant National Secretary of the Maritime Union of Australia. Ian, have you put this to the federal government yet, and have they spoken to you about it or shared their views?
There's been a number of approaches to government. We understand that the federal opposition wrote to the federal government, to the Prime Minister, requesting that this be considered as an option in a wide suite of options that the opposition presented to the Prime Minister. But also, too, we wrote to the relevant ministers in the government seeking meetings, and we're still waiting for responses.
Okay, and when do you think you might find out?
Well, hopefully in the next few days while it's down in Macquarie Island. Hopefully we get a response or a meeting to put the case forward to have the Aurora Australis take on a new life.
You've spent quite a bit of time on board the Aurora Australis. Why is it so perfect for something like this, for an emergency response?
I did. I spent 7 years on there, and I know the professionalism of the marine crew on board, over that time and beyond that time, because in my role now as the Assistant National Secretary, I often represent those guys and girls on that ship, and I know the professionalism that they conduct themselves. I know the skills and the expertise they have, but I also know too that the Aurora Australis, despite its age, 30, 31 years of age, it is a very, very healthy ship for its age. I was speaking to the engineers on board the other day, and they say, it was built with the hull was 40 mil of steel thick, and 30 years later it's still 38 mil of steel thick. So it is in extremely good nick for its age. And its versatility and being able to adapt to numerous tasks in Antarctica proves the fact that it would be able to adapt to the emergency situations that we would be confronted with, going forward. So I think it's just a very fit-for-purpose ship. And I think for us it would be a great injustice if the government didn't get on board and take this opportunity to get something so cheap with its capability to provide a service to the communities in their times of need.
I look forward to hearing the government's response. IanBray, thanks for your time today.
Thanks very much.
IanBray there, the Assistant National Secretary of the Maritime Union of Australia, talking about the future of the Aurora Australis. He thinks it should be an emergency response vessel. Your thoughts? 1300 222 936.